You're always so welcoming, and you're a very curious, inquisitive group of people. So I so appreciate that. And you have such a wide spectrum of people who come to share with you on any number of topics that you can engage with.
Hopefully it's space.
Okay. So George O'Keeffe and Ghost Ranch. And George O'Keeffe I've known about really through my sister. I have an older sister, 2 years older, Wendy, and she's more of the artist in the family. And she got very interested in George O'Keeffe as a teenager. And she ended up going to Santa Fe for college at St. John's, where they read 100 great classical books. And then she came east to do some graduate work, and eventually is now back in Santa Fe. So I was trying to count up how many visits I've made out there, for her graduation or wedding. And since then, my most recent trip was just this past summer when I finally got to Ghost Ranch. She actually had never been to Ghost Ranch before. So it was fun to be able to kind of introduce her to this lovely 21,000 acres in her backyard, pretty much. It's about an hour and 15 minutes from north of Santa Fe. So for those of you, so most people are familiar with George O'Keeffe as an artist. Yeah. And what are some of the things that you think about as you try to visualize her work in your mind?
Flowers.
Flowers, yeah. Big flowers. Yeah, the scale. Anything else? What types of colors typically?
White.
Right, yeah. And also landscapes.
Southwest landscapes.
Yeah, well, and that's really the connection that I found fascinating with Ghost Ranch. So George O'Keeffe, and one of the masters of 20th century art. So she's really considered one of those pioneers in art, and particularly as a woman artist in that time. And she was working in art when few women were, and kind of not only broke ground, but really went beyond what people were typically doing at that time. And as you were saying, these giant pictures of flowers that were revolutionary at that point. And she was the first woman to have a solo show at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And she really painted in a way that made her she was trying to express more than what she saw. So there'll be some comparisons of photographs and her artwork. And you can see that she simplifies the shapes and she uses different colors to really get you to kind of think about, how does this make me feel? You're not just looking at the flower or the landscape, but really entering into the experience of the artwork. So her early years, she was born in 1887 in Wisconsin on a farm. So her father was a farmer, and her mother, Ida, was a very well-educated woman who was the one who kind of took the lead in her education. There were 7 of them, so she was the second oldest, and got them into art school, so classes, kind of learning how to paint and draw, perspective, things like that. And she knew early on that she wanted to be a painter. And her skills in art were recognized very early on. Her teachers saw in her something very unique. And I think it was growing up on a farm that stayed with her, just how nature is very integral to her subject matter in particular. So some of her early works, and you can see both, the more realistic flowers in a vase, as well as, can you all see okay? As well as the more modern abstract colors and shapes there. So she was interested in both early on. As an artist, so she studied at the Art Institute of Chicago. That was the first place that she went. She was there only for a couple years, and then she got a little disillusioned with it. She learned how to paint and kind of the proper techniques, but she was called to do something more, something beyond what was the standard acceptable art form of the day. And then she left. She went to the Art Students League in New York City a couple years later. Was there for a while, and then had difficulties, parents getting ill and having to leave, not being able to pay for her studies any longer. So she had to, of course, like many of us, find a job to pay the bills. So she worked as an art teacher on and off at different schools for about 7 years. She also worked for about 2 years as a commercial illustrator. And then it was in 1912 that she discovered these revolutionary ideas of artist Arthur Wesley Dow. And he was emphasizing, composition. So looking at not just what's at the center of your canvas, but what's at the frame, the perimeter of it, and filling the space. And she wrote it and shared with an interview at some point that his idea was, to put it simply, to fill a space in a beautiful way. So if you just kind of keep that in mind as you think about George's artwork, she's always filling the space in a beautiful way. And again, one of the most well-known female artists of all time. Here are some of the types of artwork that she was known for. In New York City, she was kind of chided or made fun of by the male artists for painting the skyscrapers initially, and then she started to do it better than they could. And she said, oh, okay, I guess you can paint. So she did a lot of what she's not as well known for, the cityscapes and all the skyscrapers in New York City. And then, of course, as you think about New Mexico, you start to see some of the influences of that state in her artwork with the landscapes. And she also is very well known for skulls and bones. So she would go out into the desert and she found beauty in these bones and skulls, and then would bring them back and paint them. And then, of course, the flowers.
That's the postage stamp.
Yeah. So, and was it just this one?
Just that one. Just that one.
Huh. It's interesting they chose just do one. So you can see she had a lot of variety, and again, always trying to fill the space in a beautiful way. So George's life, she was known as a painter, very well known for her artistic skills, but then also this relationship with Alfred Stieglitz. And he was a very well known photographer in New York City, quite older. He actually was married at the time that they met and had a family, 24 years older. So he had galleries in New York City. And when he got to know George O'Keeffe, he immediately saw her talent. You'll see here, she mailed some of her abstract drawings to a friend that she knew in New York City from her time there as a student. And the friend took them to Alfred Stieglitz, and he thought, oh my gosh, I've got to show these. So he put them up in his gallery. And the funny thing was that he confused her name. She was living in Virginia at that time. So he called her Virginia O'Keeffe instead of Georgia O'Keeffe. So a friend who knew her said, is that you? Is that you? He's like, no, I'm not Virginia O'Keeffe. But it turns out those were her paintings. And she went and actually confronted him because he had not asked permission to display these. But it started their relationship, which turned out to be one of great love. And they did end up getting married. So in 1917, Stieglitz showed her first one-person exhibition, and later they did get married. Stieglitz had his own challenges in the art world because at that point, photography was really not recognized as a fine art. Think of Ansel Adams, someone who George O'Keeffe knew, but it was around that time that photography was being lifted up as also a recognized art form. So in 1924, they did get married. She was 37 at that time, and he was 61. Georgia O'Keeffe never did have children of her own, although she, for many years, wanted to start a family with Alfred Stieglitz, and he persuaded her not to, that she would be taking care of children and not doing her artwork. So really her paintings, became her children over the years, and she devoted her life to painting. They were very different in temperament. He was, considered to be quite the talker, and you could get him going. He loved being with people and entertaining, the more the merrier. And they often would go out for dinner wearing a similar attire, a black cape and a black Pat, so they're often seen in New York City together, quite the couple. And Georgia O'Keeffe was very much the loner, very much the introvert and quiet, and off to the side where Alfred Stieglitz was always at the center of things. It was in 1917, so soon after they met, but before they got married, that Alfred Stieglitz started photographing Georgia O'Keeffe. He found her features, her hands in particular, just captivating. And in the total of the photographs that he took, they numbered 300. So quite the work of art, 300 shots of Georgia O'Keeffe. And he continued that for about 20 years. So these are some of the pictures that Alfred Stieglitz took of her, and you can just see how photogenic she is. And throughout her life, she was very particular about being photographed by anybody else besides Alfred. So she knew how to pose. He had taught her over these 20 years and 300 photographs of what was dramatic, the contrast. She often, I don't know what point in her life, but just started to wear basic black. So she was often the contrast of black and white or black and skin. And you can see just the beauty of those photographers, the photographs that Alfred Stieglitz captured of her. Are any of you photographers? Some of you are? No one's admitting to it, huh? There we go. And again, you can see, the middle one, which is her face and hands, that idea of filling the space with beauty, whereas the other ones are kind of our more traditional way of looking at a subject in a space.
I could too. Absolutely.
So Georgia O'Keeffe eventually makes her way to New Mexico and begins this lifelong love of that part of our country. So most people, I guess, have been to New Mexico. Some of you have. Yeah. Wow. Yep. So again, I've probably been like about 10 times, I guess, over the years, and find it's so different than the East Coast, where I have lived, born, raised here in Pennsylvania, where you have the change of seasons and just the beauty of spring into summer to fall to winter and then start again. And the Southwest is such a different type of beauty, but you can, the shades of color are so different, and the horizon goes on forever, much different than, coming back to the East Coast and you see, trees. You just, there's lots of trees and you don't see the sky in the same way. So it was in 1917 that O'Keeffe made her first of many trips to New Mexico, and she just became captivated by the landscape, the native arts, the bones, the adobe architecture. And then in 1929, she would go, and every summer she would spend in New Mexico. And who was I talking to who said they did something similar? Yes, there we go. So other people have gone in the spent the summer in New Mexico and just enjoyed the expanse of it, the different experience, because there is a very unique beauty of that part of the country. So for about 40 more years, she would live and work part of the year at least in New Mexico. And when she was married to Alfred Stieglitz, she would come back to New York City in the winters and spend that time with him, but always wanting to get back to New Mexico. And I love this picture of her on the motorcycle. She must have been quite the person, quite a character, And I do not know who the man is that's giving her a ride, but just you can see her joy of being there. So Ghost Ranch, and I had heard about Ghost Ranch, gosh, probably for the past, 10, 15 years. So anytime kind of go to General Assembly, they would have a table set up, any conference, they would have a table set up in the exhibition hall, trying to share the information about Ghost Ranch, invite people to come and take a workshop. And I had planned to go in the summer of 2020 on my sabbatical, and then of course COVID happened, so I wasn't able to go. And then they had not, by the next year, hadn't really reopened to sign up for anything. So I finally did get to go this past summer, and it's just a wonderful experience. And some of you have been to Ghost Ranch, I think, right? Up to some of you. So it's just 21,000 acres. It's immense, but you really only get to see a part of it close up. But from the distance, you can see, I mean, even in this picture, you can see, you know, the welcome sign, but then in the distance, the beauty of the cliffs and the hills. So getting to New Mexico really took Georgia O'Keeffe's artwork in a new direction. And you can see the influence that it had. So it's up near Abiquiu, which is in the northern part of the state. As I said, about an hour and 15 minutes from Santa Fe. And she first encountered it kind of driving by, and she could see it, but she didn't know where the entrance was. So she couldn't actually get onto the ranch and the property. And then next summer she went back, and she finally ran into one of the employees of the ranch, so this ranch hand, and found out from him, you know, where the gate was and how she could get inside. And so there's a long driveway that takes you up to kind of the area where most of the buildings are in the Welcome Center. So she did that, and she ended up renting a house there for many summers. And she would go and she would paint the area around where she was staying. And then it wasn't until later that she finally convinced them to sell her some property. So she bought a house that had 7 acres that came with it. And this is the way it is now. So this is the map that they give you at the visitor center. So you can kind of see the welcome center in the middle. Up to the top, you'll see Chimney Rock, which is one of the outcroppings that she paints quite a lot. And you can get a sense of the cliffs. And in the far distance, over here, you'll see Petaluma. So it's a flat mountain that she painted a lot. And I'll show you that in a little bit. But this is, if you ever get the chance to go, I really would encourage you. They have all types of workshops. The week I was there this summer, they had photography and painting, weaving, hiking. I took a raccoon course, a pottery course, quilting, so just welding, anything that you would want to try. You don't have to be experienced at it. You can just be a beginner. And they will welcome you in, and you can kind of explore not only the workshop, but also the area around Ghost Ranch. There's hiking, there's horseback riding, canoeing, a lovely dining hall where they make delicious meals for all of their guests. Unfortunately, I went in July, and in June, I had sprained my ankle badly, and I was in a boot when I was there, so I didn't get to do any of the hiking trails. So I'm really looking forward to going back someday and actually being able to hike some of these wonderful trails. There was also an archaeology class, so there's some places where you can dig and find bones. So here's the Welcome Center, and it is, you know, an educational retreat center. It is owned by the PCUSA, and it was in 1955 that Phoebe and Arthur Pack, who came to own the ranch, wanted at some point, you know, to donate it. And again, it's huge, 21,000 acres. And they offered it first to the Boy Scouts. In Tegris County, there actually is a Boy Scout camp up there. So they must have figured, no, we've got plenty of property. We don't need it. They offered it to the Catholic Church. They offered it to the Methodists. And finally, the Presbyterians said, okay, you know, we'll take it. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but they did. So for many years, it was supported by the budget of the General Assembly. And in 2017, I think it was, they actually stopped funding it, and it became its own 501c3. So it's self-supporting at this point, although it's still owned by the PCUSA. There's a strong connection. So it's open to all people of all faiths, spirituality, a place where you can go kind of learn about history, nature. There is a worship service every morning. I think I have a picture of the labyrinth coming up. So it's just wonderful hospitality that our denomination extends to anyone who would like to go there and experience it. And again, you can see the adobe. The buildings fit in really well with the surrounding landscape. So the mission of Ghost Ranch stewards a place of great beauty to nurture the human spirit and mind, discover the sacred, and care for creation. And here you can see a picture of the labyrinth. So there were walks, kind of guided walks through the labyrinth. There was yoga in the morning, all kinds of things in which to engage. The values of Ghost Ranch are sustainability, inclusivity, equity, creativity, and spirituality. This is the logo, and you can see on the right-hand side is a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe that she gave to Jim Hall, who was the director of Ghost Ranch for many years. And then quite a number of years later, she suggested that they put the skull logo on some summer brochures that they were sending out. And they did that, and then she agreed for them to use her artwork for the logo. So you can really see at that point this strong permanent connection between Ghost Ranch and Georgia O'Keeffe starting to happen. Ghost Ranch also is known for something else. And does anyone recognize the setting?
Is that Los Alamos?
Yeah, it's the Oppenheimer set for the movie that came out this past summer. So it actually was not filmed there, but it was filmed on Ghost Ranch. So they've made quite an industry of recreating areas in the Southwest where movies and television shows can be filmed because, again, they have 21,000 acres. They have a lot of land. And now they have permission, so they have permanent sets that they can leave up, and it'll make it easier for them to host some of these movies. So, and when Oppenheimer was being filmed, there was a great level of secrecy, so you couldn't talk about it, they wouldn't let anyone on to film, but now they have incorporated it into their movie tour. So along with a tour that they do about Georgia O'Keeffe, they also offer one about all the movies that they have hosted. And I think I have some of them. So City Slickers, 310 to Yuma, Magnificent Seven, Indiana Jones, so quite a number of film production. And they have a couple that coordinates that for them. So they'll work with the movie studios, bring them in, figure out what needs to be constructed, build that, and then of course you have to house all of the movie staff, the actors, and feed them, and so it's quite the industry. So some people you just see, I haven't seen Oppenheimer yet, but I understand it's very good, although long, yeah. Well, the view you were seeing was really Ghost Ranch. So here, I just have some photos to show you kind of get the idea of what Georgia O'Keeffe encountered when she came from, again, she was born in Wisconsin, she lived in New York City, she was in Virginia, and then coming to the Southwest, what a change that is if you have never been there. And you can see how the landscape begins to give her freedom to kind of paint in a new way. This is Chimney Rock, which she painted quite a lot, and you can see some of the colors, the yellows, the orange, the rust. And here's Chimney Rock again. So on the left is one of the buildings of Ghost Ranch, and the adobe architecture, which really blends in with the surrounding natural landscape. And then above it, that's what they call Chimney Rock, that outcropping of rock that points up. And on the right is Georgia O'Keeffe's painting, kind of this. So she's taken this area and painted it and simplified the shapes and used colors in a way that, again, fills the whole space with beauty. So instead of just kind of seeing in the center part of that large escape, you see really close up what she was looking at and what she wants you to focus on. It was fascinating. My sister and I went on the tour of Georgia O'Keeffe and Ghost Ranch and kind of follow in her footsteps and see some of the places that she painted. And I'll show you some of those slides, which people have then gone back and tried to study, different paintings and find, okay, where was she even standing? And she often sat in her car and painted. So she had a car made, and this was when she was more well known and had the money to do so. So she had a car made with a seat that would swivel, so the driver's seat swiveled, the passenger seat was removed, and she could swivel her seat all the way around, and then in the back seat she would have her easel set up. So she would actually paint in her car if she didn't want to have to get out and set things up. So she was quite ingenious. And I think very persistent and adamant and stubborn, and she knew what she wanted and didn't hesitate to ask for it. So here you can see one of the slides. So as you're going on the tour, this is Georgia O'Keeffe's painting in the center in the plastic, and then holding it up and seeing in the landscape what it was she was painting. And the paintings I find more beautiful than the landscape, and I don't know if you are the same way, but there's something about the colors that she chooses, and again, filling the space and simplifying the shapes that just brings such beauty to this landscape that she makes you encounter it in a different way. So as you're surrounded by the landscape in New Mexico, you really can feel like you're stepping into one of Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings. And visitors still, you can just go and just be mesmerized by what you're seeing and what you're encountering in the artwork. And of course, a number of people are there to paint as well. So we do have, Fran, do you want to show your paintings? So, Fran has been to Ghost Ranch to paint. Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
Can we pass them around? Or so you'll see Fran's artwork. Beautiful. Again, kind of expanding to the edges and just the colors. Beautiful. How long did you work on these?
I was there for an afternoon. I did both of them. So an hour.
An afternoon.
I know.
Right. Wow.
Show them to,
I don't know if I can show that. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, wait, where are you?
Over there, yeah.
There you go. I'm trying to see. And how did you pick where you wanted to paint and your colors and?
well, as I told you, I was taking a class, and we got permission to drive up out of the valley where Ann was staying there and get up higher. So we were higher up so you could see the tops of these rock formations, which were just spectacular. So this looks like it's maybe from the valley, this shot, but we were up higher. And, the colors were what I saw was there. I mean,
Yeah.
There's a lot of purple. So those mountains that were very far away, that's how they look to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they might not look purple to someone else, but that color was put there to create the sense of distance and to create contrast with the yellow. I mean, if you want to create contrast, you use opposite colors on the color wheel. And the cool is receding. The cool purple color is receding to create distance, and the warm colors are coming forward. It was a little overcast there. I think that was the second one I did. The first one,
Yeah, you have a brighter sky.
there was more sun. It was almost full sun.
Right.
So,
Fran, are you oil or?
yeah, they're oil.
They're oil.
Mhm.
And was Georgia O'Keeffe, was she water or oil?
She painted it, well,
I think
watercolor
about
and
an
oil.
oil.
That looks like a watercolor, that one, but she was painted in oil.
But she would do both, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a great day being up there and being able to do this.
It's amazing how much the sky will change the feeling of the landscape as well. So the clouds change.
Yeah.
Sometimes the sky is just totally blue, and then other times you have these really dark clouds come in.
Right. I mean, I had to do
Changes.
these really fast because in another hour, it would be a different painting.
Yeah.
I mean, the light would be coming from a different angle and it would just be something else. So you had to,
Can you take a picture to
Yeah,
fine tune this,
no.
or you just do it quickly?
you know, they're from plein air, they're from life. Yeah. And I did them both in an afternoon, so.
Wow.
But you have to be fast to capture the light because it's going,
It moves.
It's going
the
to
sun's
change.
move, you know, yeah, everything changes. So if I wanted to do something else, more detail, I would have to go back another day at the same time.
Try to catch it.
Or
yeah.
take a photo, which I wasn't
And
interested in doing.
Fran, when were you there? When would you?
That might have been, was there a date on it? Where I signed it in the front?
Yeah, 2010.
2010, yeah. And I was just there last October, but I wasn't painting. I did some hiking and it's just a really fabulous place.
It is. Yes.
Did it escape the fires of a year ago? Were they?
It did. They were okay, but yeah, they have had their fires. Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Did you take a painting class when you were there by any chance?
No, my sister has since gone back 2 other times. So in the fall, like Fran, yeah, she went back to one of those was a painting class that she took. So I've only taken the pottery class, but I'll go back. Yeah. So some of you can come with me. We'll all go. So here's another, the cliffs, and you can see, on the left-hand side what it actually looks like in a photograph, and then what she painted. And I think this is one of my favorite ones, just the colors that she got. And again, you can see the simplification of the shapes of what was there in nature. And the fascinating thing is, I always think of painting as, if you're trying to do a realistic landscape, you're going to try to paint everything that's there. But she has removed things that she thought, well, I don't want that there, or, she'll bring the layers of the one cliff, compress those, change some of the vegetation. So she didn't paint exactly what was there, but what she wanted you to see.
And I hiked up very close to
You
it.
got on top of it, yeah.
In October when I was there, still in the valley, but we got very close to that formation. So when you can go back without a boot, you can,
Yeah, I'll go back
get
and
real
see.
close to that.
It's quite gorgeous. And you can see, what she does with the sky. So here's a lot of sky, but no clouds. So her painting on the right, and this is called White Place in Shadow. And again, I find I like her painting better than the real thing. There's something about what she's done. In fact, she just put a little pink in there and simplified things. And it's a beautiful shade of blue. And here's a painting called Hill. On the left-hand side is Georgia O'Keeffe's painting, and then on the right is a photograph by Anne Fisher. So you can, if you go to Ghost Ranch, you get there, you can take the Georgia O'Keeffe walking tour, and they will show you a number of places where you can see what she painted and what was really there. This is, as Fran was saying, trying to get the depth of a landscape, and it's rust red hills. So Georgia O'Keeffe really playing with the colors here and the different layers. And again, some contrast there with the blues and the oranges. And what she's done with the sky. So it's a sky, but it's not blue. And here's another Black Mesa landscape. So beautiful contrast of those colors and shapes. And this is more, getting more abstract. So it's a landscape, but she's really getting into, how does it make you feel? How do you enter into that picture? And then her flowers. So these magnified flowers that she's very well known for. And it gives you that sense of awe and wonder. She made 200 overall, these giant paintings of different types, large scale flowers. And this is her quote about it. I decided that if I could paint that flower in a huge scale, You could not ignore its beauty. And when you think of, kind of more traditional flower, a vase, and a still life, you don't see the beauty in the flowers so much. You kind of see the arrangement of the bouquet, but she really wants you to focus on that particular poppy or whatever the flower was, that you would see it, and you get up close. So in 2014, Georgia O'Keeffe's Jimson Weed flower painting sold for $44.4 million, more than 3 times any previous female artist. And she continues to hold the record for the highest price paid for a painting by a woman. Wow. It's just a beautiful painting, isn't it? And again, filling the space with beauty. She just filled the whole area. And you can't not see the beauty of that flower. And then I mentioned the skulls and the bones. So she was unusual in that she would go for walks and then collect these bones and skulls that she would then bring back and paint. She was known even into her late years to go for a 30-minute walk in the morning and then a 30-minute walk at night. And she said, to me, these are as beautiful as anything I know. The bones seem to cut sharply to the center of something that is keenly alive on the desert, even though it is vast and empty and untouchable. So as you look at paintings of bones or think about bones, would you agree with her statement?
Maybe.
Most of us have a different response to skulls. Yeah.
She makes them beautiful.
Absolutely.
She does make, yeah.
She finds the beauty.
And fascinating how the skull is up so close and the landscape is in the different distance. So what do you think she's like trying to get you to focus on her? What's her meaning here? What does she want you to feel or to know, do you think?
That there's beauty in objects that you wouldn't think there was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just want to say something, if you don't mind. You mentioned that she painted in her car.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Wyeth also painted in his car in Chester County for many, many years. And in the same way, he found beauty in like really beat up buildings that no one else would look at. So there's some similarity there in their vision, I think.
Yeah, very much so. Thanks, Fran.
Don't you think it's the geometry that really kind of pulls you in?
Mm-hmm. You really, with the skull and the antlers, you really see the positive and negative spaces against the sky. There is a beauty to it.
It's really very graceful.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought of antlers as graceful, but the way she has depicted it.
As I mentioned, Georgia O'Keeffe was able to purchase a house on Ghost Ranch and 7 acres, which I don't believe anyone else ever did. So, and her, the expanse out her one window was Pedernal, this flat top mountain that she painted over and over and over again. So she had a beautiful view through her years that she was living there. She also purchased a house in Abiquiu, which is about 15-20-minute drive away, and she would spend, that would kind of be her winter home, and then she would be summers here on Ghost Ranch. You can't actually go into that home. It's private property, and once the Presbyterians owned the 21,000 acres, Georgia O'Keeffe was very concerned that the relationship would not be as good as it happened when she first purchased the property, and she wouldn't have her privacy, and people would be coming and going and knocking on her door all the time. But they were very respectful of the privacy that she wanted to maintain, and just as to this day, explain that that's private property, it's fenced off, you can't go in, you don't do a tour of it. You can go to her house in Abiquiu and take a tour of that house. And if you go online, you can see any number of photographs of people who have been invited in to do a story about Georgia O'Keeffe. And you can see her kitchen, she loved to garden, her workspace and where she lived. So this is one of many of the paintings that she did of the red and gray hills and then Pedernal in the background. And here's another one, Pedernal. Look, very different, but same mountain. And as Graham said, you know, the light changes, and you think about going through the seasons. You can look at some of her paintings that look like it's the same composition, but because she painted in the spring or the summer, fall, or winter, they look slightly different, and she's doing unique things with the colors and the shapes. So Pedernal Mountain, and she said this about it: "It's my private mountain. It belongs to me. God told me if I painted it enough, I could have it." And I don't actually know how many paintings she did at Pedernal, but here you can see, and I think this is a series, part of a series that she did where she took some of the bones that she collected, and she would hold up the bone and kind of paint through them. If you can picture some of those. So I think this is kind of like the bone looking through it with the contrast there. But here's, you know, Pedernal it's still there at the bottom. So you have the landscape at the bottom, kind of similar to the other one with the skull, where there's still the landscape, but then more prominent is something else that she's showing you. So Georgia O'Keeffe as subject, and I just find her very photogenic, as did Alfred Stieglitz. This is part of a Life exposition, Life magazine, that was done in the 1970s about Georgia O'Keeffe's life, and the photographer was invited to come for about 3 days and interview her and shadow her, and he didn't take any photos of her painting, and she wasn't actually painting at that time, but he took kind of her and then of her life there at Ghost Ranch. So she kept a file of where all of her artwork was at the time, as she would lend it out or give it to people. And again, you know, the black that she came to be known to be wearing. This is taken up on the roof of her house. So she had a ladder and she could go to the top, and she would often sit up there and I guess paint as well. This is obviously in her older years. She did have quite the reputation of living as a hermit, but the photographer who was there, you know, encountered many people kind of coming and going. So I think there were particular people that came to visit, but she just didn't want anyone showing up at her doorstep. And here she is. So during the last few years of her life, she was unable to get to Ghost Ranch, and she lived in her house in Abiquiu. And then eventually she needed more and more medical care. She moved to Santa Fe permanently. And she died, let's see, when she was 98. Yeah, she's known to have said, yeah, when she got more reclusive, that she found people very difficult. I think she was not one to suffer fools gladly. She let me know if she's tired of talking to you. So her legacy, in 77, President Ford presented O'Keeffe with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a highest award, highest honor awarded to American citizens. She received the National Medal of Arts from President Reagan, and then died in March 6, 1986, at the age of 98, and inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. And currently there are 500 examples of her works, or in over 100 public collections in Asia, Europe, North and Central America. She's a remarkable artist of renown. And in the later part of her life, she took a lot of trips. I don't have a picture of it, but there's one very well-known painting of clouds, and they look more like kind of stepping stones on a sea of blue. So that was done. She was flying in an airplane looking down on the clouds, and she saw this, and then she went home and painted it. And it's just an expansive painting that she completed towards the end of her life. This was a little video I was going to show, but I don't think we're going to try to bother with that because it doesn't work really well with Ted's hotspot. So I can describe the video a little bit. You know, it's kids being interviewed at the Tate Museum and how they encountered the photographs of Georgia O'Keeffe, and really trying to get the kids to look at the colors and the shapes and the simplified nature of her artwork, and then inviting, like, and how does it make you feel? And they come up with some really great answers of the lights in some of the buildings of the cityscape, making it feel very safe and secure. You know that there's a light in the window in some of the landscapes. Just enjoy the beauty of the colors. There is a wonderful Georgia O'Keeffe Museum in Santa Fe, so if you're ever there, I guess some of you may have been there before. Yeah. Well worth a visit, and you can see the progression of her work from when she was quite a young student and child through the years, and moving beyond what she was taught to what she, you know, the vision that she wanted to share with others, and her encounter with New Mexico and that significant change with the landscapes and the skulls and the beauty of the flowers. So she's known for saying, I found I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say in any other way, things I had no words for. And there's her signature. So there she is painting, and that's a well-known tree painting that she did, and I didn't include that, but again, it's on the tour, and you can go and you can see that tree is still there, because in the desert, things don't really deteriorate the way that they do on the East Coast in the forest. So they're much better preserved, and that tree is still there, and someone has kind of figured out, okay, this is where she was when she painted it.
Looks like she's in a car.
Yeah, she may be in the car at that point. It could be in the window on the side of the car. Yeah, very fun. So I do have a closing prayer, but any comments or yes?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in Santa Fe, in the middle of August, they have Indian Market. And in the center of Santa Fe is the plaza. And then there's some portals where the old fort is. And so in the middle of August, you get lots of tourists, particularly rich oil Texans and Californians and so on. And you see a lot of Native American art, whether it's flat art or baskets or Native American pottery or jewelry, some of which you can see on Museum Hill. But it's very crowded, but it's a very interesting place to visit. And there's a lot going on there all the time.
Thank you. It is. Santa Fe is just a lovely place to visit, but it has gotten quite crowded. So lots of tourists, as other people have found out the beauty and the wonder of being in that area. So I know my sister went to college in the 80s, and you know, in the time since then, it's really more developed and a tourist destination. But yes.
How many paintings are attributed to her, and did you acquire them by going out to a gallery in Santa Fe, or did she send them out all over the country?
Yeah, I don't know how many her total body of work is, but I would guess, you know, close to 1,000. I don't know. And she would often give them to family and to friends. So initially they were given as gifts, and then she started selling them. So there was a story about selling some of like a series of 3 or 4 of her flower paintings initially when she and Alfred Stieglitz needed money to live on. And they were very torn about doing that just to have an income. But they did, and they got a promise from the owner, whoever was purchasing it, that they would be displayed and hung together as a series. And so I think, and probably as she became even more and more well-known and financially stable, that she was able to be more particular about what happened to her paintings. Yeah, so most of them, I'm sure, are in museums or owned by private collectors. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, and I wish I remembered the name of the play, but I saw a play in Wilmington. Deborah Winger played her, and Stacy Keach played Alfred. And it was about their life. It was quite a while ago, but it was really, really wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It must have been fascinating. Yeah. Because I was reading more about Georgia O'Keeffe, and you can definitely tell this was a significant relationship in her life. And just falling in love. I think she was 30, you know, when they kind of fell in love, and he was 54, 24 years older and married. And pretty scandalous at the time, I think, and that they were living together at one point before they were married because his wife didn't give him a divorce right away. There was a lot of affection and love between the two of them. And so much talent. Other thoughts and comments? Yeah.
There's a small museum in Lancaster, and I'm new to the area, so maybe everybody else knows about it, but I didn't. But it's the Demuth, I'm saying it right, museum, and he was a close friend of hers and a contemporary. So the artwork is kind of industrial, but the same style. And it's just a cute little museum, close by.
I have not been there. Yeah, has anyone been there? Yeah, there goes Paul.
Charles
You should go.
Demuth.
Oh, Charles Demuth, yeah.
Yeah, downtown Lancaster.
Downtown Lancaster.
Or maybe I butchered the name,
No, yeah, he was an artist who painted in the early 20th century, sort of modernism style. Similar reduction of shapes and colors and things like that.
Yeah.
Thanks, I need to go there.
Yeah.
I know, isn't that funny? I often take someone coming from another area of the country.
Yeah.
And say, hey, did you know this is right in your backyard? You should go. It's great. Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments? All right, well, why don't we close in prayer? If you'll join me, let's pray. Creator God, we thank you for the beauty of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. Amen. Thank you all very much, and I hope you go to Ghost Ranch or go to a museum and check out some artwork.